Okay, so this is what happens when you fall asleep while Netflix has Evangelion on autoplay. By complete chance, while looking around for the game that I wanted to do a video on next, I came across Pagan Autogeny, which ended up being a very good foil for a lot of the criticisms I had of Mundan. So I decided I wanted this video to be a little bit of a redemption arc for my last video. What I mean by that is, even though I didn't particularly like the funny goat game all that much, I do think that this genre of sort of mechanically light horror art games is still a valid form of game design, and something that can be interesting when done well or done in a unique and weird way. So let's take a look at undisputed bizarre art game, Pagan Autogeny. Autogeny is a very odd game about collecting tarot cards, which is pretty cool, I guess. I have tarot cards, and I'm pretty good at reading them, so that was kind of interesting. Not really sure how much mana the Three of Swords costs, though. As usual, let's start with the game mechanics. Autogeny is basically a collectathon. You collect items to increase your definitely real skills, you kill a few simple bosses, and you collect tarot cards and other items to progress. That's basically it. It also leans pretty heavily into surrealist horror. A lot of the fun of this game is just trying to figure out its weird rules and learning to navigate its odd map. You're just kind of dropped into it with no warning or explanation, and the only tutorial you get is 2 buttons. The rest you kind of have to figure out on your own, which to me is the best way to design a video game. Of course, this method works best when the game is relatively simple, and it also is sort of circular in that it can be used to make a simple game more exciting. Sure, Autogeny is mostly a game about wandering around aimlessly, picking up tarot cards and gunning down helpless polyhedrons, but I need to kind of work for it. I need to explore the world and get an internal map. I need to figure out what the priestly robes do on my own. I need to figure out what this does on my own. And that sense of mystery can carry a game that would otherwise be boring. Humans have a simple monkey brain, and sometimes you just need to give them a nice puzzle to solve, like giving a rat a hard-boiled egg, or asking a YouTuber to form a healthy relationship with another human. Autogeny illustrates what is, in my opinion, the most important thing when it comes to making one of these walking sim / art games good, and that's just being extremely fucking weird. Sure, Mundan was surreal and had a strange art style, but its rules were still coherent and the game world still made sense. Autogeny throws all of that completely out the window, which is good. I want to be confused and lost playing a game like this. If I can understand the world, I'll start to get bored. But if I'm looking at a nightmare realm where nothing makes any sense, I'll constantly be engaged. It's one of the reasons that I think games like this, that you find a lot of the time on sites like itch or just on random pages of the internet, tends to transcend the idea of walking sims being bad or boring, more so than more produced mainstream games in similar genres. I've heard the term alt game to describe these shorter art house projects, and I think that's a good title. Games like this are alternative in every imaginable way. They subvert what a game should be, but in a way that's actually kind of fun and interesting to look at. But I'm getting off track, and this wouldn't be an art game if all we did was boil the game down to its component game mechanics, so let's get into actually analyzing this thing a little bit. The description of Autogeny, both on itch or Steam or wherever else you find yourself buying it, reads as follows. 1,000 worlds surround our own, composed of bits and bytes. When they die, where do they go? What secrets do they hide? Stumble ye wayfarer through the wreckage of a dead MMO. As a guy who played a shitload of MMOs in the past, from World of Warcraft to RuneScape to Tibia and many others that have since turned to dust and become forgotten to time, this is a fun concept. It's also a good concept from the angle of making a game that is a little bit unsettling or strange. The idea of the old haunted MMO with weird liminal spaces and indecipherable game mechanics no one remembers how to use is a fun one from a storytelling perspective, and this is very much the energy that Autogeny is trying to channel. When you first start the game, the only tutorial you get is this sign. Following the advice and checking your skills, you see that they don't exactly make a lot of sense. This is a good way to simulate the idea of logging on to an old, forgotten MMO you've never played before, opening up the character window, only to find out you don't have any idea what the fuck any of the stats and skills you're looking at actually do. What better way to simulate this feeling than by just making all of the skills nonsense? Beyond giving that feeling of mechanical mystery, Autogeny also very much picks up on the social aspect of what it's like to be playing a dead game. The guy who is still desperately hanging on to the idea that the game might hold some new content or secret years later. The guy who is still trying to organize a raid party even though there are only like 3 people online. I have personally met both of these guys in real life. Autogeny also does a good job of invoking the eerie feeling of loneliness and nostalgia you get from logging on to a long-dead online game through its level design. The game is made up of strange, foggy, and disjointed locations that sort of feel dreamlike. Much like the effort to simulate the idea of mechanical confusion by making a stat screen that looks like nonsense, making level design that looks and feels similarly insane kind of invokes the same feelings you would have logging into World of Warcraft Classic and standing in Orgrimmar with like 3 guys. It's kind of hard to quantify the exact feeling I'm trying to convey here, but anyone who's played an old MMO knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's like walking through a ghost town built for 100 people to live in that is now totally empty and silent. But this is only one layer of theming going on in Autogeny, and of course, this being an art game, there's a lot more going on under the surface. The most obvious themes in Autogeny revolve around transitioning from one gender to another. Between the skill literally called estrogen being increased by finding prescription pill bottles, and the skill called body forging being increased by literally piecing together a female body, we don't exactly need to call up Vati Vidya to dig up the deep fucking lore here. Unfortunately, I'm not trans, and I don't really have any close trans friends, so I don't really want to spend too much time talking out of my ass about trans issues or getting too deep into this game's symbolism surrounding it. I mean, the game's title is Autogeny, auto being a Greek prefix for self, and gen being a Greek Latin suffix for creation of the self. Yeah, we have a pretty big brain on this channel, folks. Anyways, trans rights or whatever, here's the flag. Let's talk about some dumb white people shit that I'm way more qualified for. Tarot cards. Tarot cards are another central theme in Autogeny. For one, they're an item that you can equip for certain bonuses. The Chariot increases your movement speed, for example, and Strength increases your damage. If you're familiar at all with reading tarot cards, neither of these effects should really surprise you, and you'll be able to predict some of the other ones as well. The Chariot in tarot reading symbolizes willpower, forward movement, and determination, among other things, so increasing movement speed sort of makes sense. Strength is obviously strength, but it usually refers to inner strength. You'll notice the lady on the card is taming the lion, not through force, but a more soft power. Of course, in a video game, usually you're taming lions with guns, so let's just make it increase your damage. The lines of thought here all make sense. I'm pretty sure that a lot of them do nothing, but what's more on brand for tarot cards than them doing nothing 90% of the time? Beyond being mechanically relevant and giving you some big stat numbers, some tarot cards are also needed to progress, namely these 5. The Tower, the Star, the Moon, the Sun, and the World. In order to kind of understand where the fuck this is going and what all of these symbolize in Autogeny, I kind of have to explain how the major arcana in tarot works. In a standard tarot deck, you've got 78 cards, which is a lot. Most of the time in video games that want to use tarot cards as a form of storytelling or symbolism, like Cyberpunk 2077 for example, instead of using the entire 78 card deck, which would be insane, they use the 22 most important cards, which are called the major arcana. This includes the more famous tarot cards that you've probably heard of even if you aren't into hippie bullshit, like Death, the Fool, or the Devil. The major arcana tell the cyclical story of the Fool's journey, starting of course with the Fool, which is numbered 0, and ending with the World, which is numbered 21. Without getting too far into the weeds here and turning this into a witchcraft and crystal healing channel, cards 16, 17, 18, and 19 of the major arcana are the Tower, the Star, the Moon, and the Sun, which, if you remember, are the ones I said earlier you need to complete the game. This is a very important sequence in the tarot. The Tower symbolizes a sudden upheaval, disaster, or rapid change in life. This disaster can never be predicted. It will always be unforeseen. The Star represents the time immediately following the disaster, which is best spent resting and healing from its effects. The Moon represents the turbulent road ahead following the period of rest and the various anxieties, contradictions, and choices you will need to make along the way. And finally, the Sun represents a total defeat of the disaster, symbolizing success, happiness, and fulfillment. Of course, this is a very, very simplified and standardized version of what these cards typically mean, and there are a lot more subtleties in the imagery on the cards that I could talk about for probably another 45 minutes. What's more important in the context of autogeny is how this sequence ties into the rest of the game. You could probably tie this into the whole dead MMO angle if you really wanted to. Let's say the Tower is the game's servers shutting down, the Star is the last time you're online with all your friends, the Moon is trying to fill that void in your life, and the Sun is finding another game with the boys. This is all pretty banal, but it does work. It's probably a lot more likely, though, that these cards were chosen as the 4 required to complete the game, based on how they relate to the trans allegory I was talking about earlier. The Tower being the realization that you are trans, the Star being a period of seeking guidance, the Moon being the journey and the hardships of the transition itself, and the Sun representing the feeling of finally being comfortable in your body. Obviously, I'm not really the target audience for a message like this one, but I can imagine if I was a bored trans teen cruising around itch for a game to play, and I came across Autogeny by pure chance, it would be extremely validating and cathartic. Kind of like when I play a game that has weird little ghouls in it. Damn, man. That's me. Of course, the final card you need to actually finish the game is the final card of the major arcana, the World, which symbolizes a complete journey and enlightenment. Beyond this being the logical endpoint for a video game, you can also imagine that confronting the Tower, or the unforeseen events in your life, and the journey that follows the Tower are all required parts for you to complete your own personal journey. This is all very deep. Go ahead and show him the Twitter header. All of this being said, I think that Autogeny is a good alt game. It's insane, abstract, unsettling, and forces you to learn its rules in a way that never really gets boring. And clocking it at only about 2 hours, it never feels like it overstays its welcome. This, I think, is pretty much the perfect recipe to make an art game that is actually interesting and fun to play, as well as fun to talk about and share with other people. If you want to see more videos like this one, consider subscribing. Leaving a like and a comment are also very helpful, and sharing this video around the internet is also great. If you're already subscribed, make sure that you have notifications turned on, so YouTube might maybe tell you I uploaded if you're lucky. And down in the description, I have links to both my Twitch channel where I stream sometimes, and my Discord channel where I have a very active community of what I assume but ultimately cannot prove are human beings. And finally, you should follow me on Twitter so you don't miss any important updates. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.